Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to another episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is that time. It is Monday review as I take a look back at Saturday's slightly frustrating, narrow 1-0 defeat to the now league leaders Ipswich Town, who are unbeaten in their first 9 games of the season. In a game, before we get into us too much, that featured the return of this man. Our former number 1, Tomas, his first return to the Men's Priestfield Stadium since leaving us for the Tractor Boys in the summer. And Tomas showed all the class, all the professionalism, and all the humble nature that we became accustomed to in his 2.5 years with us, in fairness. And as you can see from that video that you've just watched, he got a wonderful reception from our support. All 3 sides of the ground stood to applaud him. Start of the second half when he walked down towards the Rainham end, and again at the end of the game. And there's been things on Twitter. I know one particular young man, Mason, who has been on the channel, is a huge fan of Tomas, and he had his photo taken with him a few times last season and the season before. I know I've spoken to his dad a few times and said that Tomas is a top bloke as well as a top player and a top pro, and he took the time, even as an Ipswich player, to have his photo taken with young Mason again. So I think that sums up everything about Tomas Holy, the man. And in terms of Tomas Holy, the footballer, I think it's fair to say that he's improved in the short time it is since he's left us and gone to Portman Road. He's now working under the tutelage of Jimmy Walker, who was our former goalkeeping coach from a few years ago. And everything he did was pretty much immaculate. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 kicks that were slightly scuffed, but in terms of shot stopping, he didn't have a great deal to do, but what he did well. He come and collected crosses, whether that was punching them or catching them, and his distribution was generally spot on. So great to see Tomas. Would have been nice if he'd had a bit of a nightmare, all jokes aside. But yeah, I think I said in the match preview on Thursday that he's probably joined the right club. And I think Saturday's game only emphasises that point, because they look to be a club going places at this level, and Tomas Holy deserves all the recognition and all the plaudits that come his way, because he very rarely let us down in 2.5 seasons, and it looks like he's taken his game to the next level. So congratulations to him. And obviously we'll see him again, potentially in the leasings.com in a couple of weeks, but certainly, barring injury or suspension, Boxing Day at Portman Road in the return fixture. So, but that's enough about him. Obviously, in terms of us, it was a really, really good display. We said that on the Match Day Live. We've said that on Twitter and Facebook. Full of grit, full of determination, full of application, full of teamwork. The work ethic was spot on. First whistle to last, we harried, we harassed Ipswich, we stopped them from playing. And this is a side that's got very, very good players all over the park. And it was one big bit of quality from them, mixed in with maybe us switching off ever so slightly. There were question marks from myself and Boz and Stocky and Gary in the ground that over maybe Jack Bonham and Thomas O'Connor. Does Thomas O'Connor lose his man a little bit easily? Potentially, but we have to remember he's a kid on loan. He's still learning his trade and he's learning on the job. Could Jack Bonham come and do more, come and claim the cross? Potentially again, but I think sometimes we have to say fair play to the opposition. The build-up play was spot on. The delivery was very decent, and Kane Vincent-Young made a very good late run from out wide into the 6-yard box, which makes it difficult to pick up. And obviously he's heading it on the run, whereas Thomas O'Connor is trying to jump and head it away from a standing start. So that makes it tricky for him. But by no means were we disgraced. It was a really good performance. And if we'd managed to put away the big chance literally a minute or 2 before they scored, it could have been an entirely different contest. That chance I'm talking about is Max Amar. Ball gets played into the box, it bounces around. Brandon Hanlon tries a bicycle kick, doesn't quite catch it, but it sort of bounces down off of him and into the 6-yard box, and Max Amar's no more than 5-6 yards out, middle of the goal, can't quite get enough contact on it, and it bobbles agonisingly wide of the post. Before that, we'd had Thomas O'Connor's dipping volley that I, for one, thought was in. If that drops in the net, then obviously it's a different game entirely if we take the lead. Ollie Lee snatched at a couple of decent chances, edge of the box. Brandon Hanlon was unlucky with a header, didn't quite get enough on it second half. And Mark Byrne had one that he caught well, but drilled it straight down the throat of Big Tomas. So it wasn't like we didn't create chances. Whether we worked Tomas enough is probably another thing. But that will come with games. I'm confident of that. But I think to sum up, against a side that for me is going to be in the top two come the final reckoning, based on what I saw at the weekend. And this is a side that didn't have their top scorer for the first 70 minutes in James Norwood. But they've got a good partner alongside him in Caden Jackson, who set up the goal. And like I say, they've got quality all over the pitch. But we're not a million miles away, I don't think. I think we could play like that 9 times out of 10 and probably win 7. Because they are the very, very top end of League One for me. And potentially they've got championship players. So by no means a poor performance, a disappointing result. I'm not sure I entirely agree with Steve Evans' comments that we've done enough to win the game. I think I said on the Matchday Live that it's one of them fixtures where, as a home fan, you probably say we're unlucky to lose, we probably deserved the point. But if you're a fan of the Tractor Boys travelling back up to Norfolk, then you say, yeah, it's a job well done. We've managed it really well. We've been professional and we deserve our 3 points. But obviously in terms of the game and breaking it down a bit further, there was a full home debut in the league for one youngster, and that is this man coming up on your screen. And just how good was it to see young Jack Tucker make his first start in the league for us, nearly 2 years on from his last appearance in the league, when he came on as a substitute home to Portsmouth in a 1-0 home defeat in front of the Sky cameras under Peter Taylor. People mentioned throughout pre-season and when these players were being released that Steve Evans perhaps doesn't trust youth, but I think that shows, along with the fact that he's brought in Thomas O'Connor on loan, that if you're good enough, he does trust you, regardless of age. And I thought 19-year-old Jack had a very decent hour. I think the one thing that maybe let him down, and I'm probably being very nitpicky, I suppose is the word, is I thought he could have just been slightly better with his distribution. I thought everything was just too straight and it kept bouncing out for goal kicks or through to the opposition keeper, Tomas Holy. I just thought he could have put more angle on him or just take a little bit off him. But we have to remember he's still a kid, he's still learning his trade, and I think as far as first hours go in league football, he can be very pleased with the way he handled himself. Won a couple of early headers, won a couple of early tackles. We know he can play. I think he's got all the ability to be a very good centre-half at this level. And you never know, maybe further up. But obviously, let's not put pressure on him. And only time will tell. So well done to Jack Tucker. I think I've just tweeted him tonight and replied to his tweet and said, hopefully the first of many. If he keeps working hard and keeps showing the same type of dedication and hard work on the training ground, I think you'll get more minutes, more opportunities from the bench or to start. He's by no means the finished article, and I'm sure he's intelligent enough to realise that himself. But I remember meeting Jack Tucker's parents inadvertently at Faversham a couple of summers ago, and me and my dad were raving about this young centre-half down at Salters Lane, and suddenly this lady turned to us and said, "Oh, that's my son," and she was immensely proud, and so was his dad, and understandably so. It must be incredible to have a child that potentially can make a career out of doing something that he clearly loves, and I'm sure they're even prouder now than they were 2 years ago, and fingers crossed that Jack continues to progress and continues to play games for us, because if he does, like I say, continue to show that type of dedication, I think he'll become a regular in years to come. So yeah, well done to Jack. In terms of the Medway Messenger this week, Luke Cordell's final paragraph in his match report, I think, summed it up very well. Ipswich have enough quality to turn teams over with ease, but nothing came easy for them on Saturday. All credit to the Gills for giving them a real game. And again, it comes back to what I've said, and I think what Steve Evans has alluded to. I don't think we're a million miles away anymore. Like we've said plenty of times, this is a new group. Yes, it's frustrating that we've only picked up 2 wins in the league, but I think personally our performances have probably deserved slightly more. But the table doesn't lie. You are where you are for a reason, because you've won a certain amount of games and you've got a certain amount of points. But we could easily have 14, maybe 15 if you think Tranmere 2-0 up, Blackpool 2-0 up, if we'd held on for a point Saturday. And then we're looking at an entirely different thing. But we've got 2 games coming up that I think are very winnable if we continue to show the same sort of performance levels, and that's Oxford away on Saturday, and then I think it's Southend, who did pick up their first win of the season at the weekend, the week after. But I'm confident if we do, like I say, show the same levels of intensity and quality, because we do have quality in this squad. Let's make no bones about that. And we had a couple missing at the weekend in terms of Alfie Jones, who's probably been our best player this season, most consistent certainly, does all the work that goes unnoticed in terms of his position, sits in front of the back four, wins it, turns over possession, gives it to others, keeps it simple. And I've said plenty of times in the short space of time that I've seen him that he's got all the tools to go and play holding midfield in the Premier League within 2-3 years tops. But for now, let's enjoy him and let's hope that he's fit for Oxford on Saturday. And Mark Marshall, again, we mentioned on the Match Day Live, myself and Glenn, that unfortunately was unavailable, was back in the Caribbean burying his father. So best wishes again to Mark Marshall and all his family at what must be a troubling and heartbreaking time. But yeah, we still had the likes of Mikael Mandron, Mikael and Jolly, Regan Charles Cook, Ben Pringle to come on from the bench. And I thought Ben Pringle was absolutely immaculate when he did come on midway through the second half. He's got first touch to die for at this level, left-footed, which provides balance and width, can use both feet. I think there was one reverse ball, almost no look, that I was purring over shortly after he'd come on, and he had it sort of in the inside right channel, got his head up, looked like he was going to spray it out wide, and then spotted the run of someone on his outside and just reversed it in between the fullbacks or the 2 centre halves, and we almost got him behind. And I just think once we get him and Ollie Lee and Mark Marshall up to full speed, we're going to have some really good creative influences to hopefully unlock doors, unlock defences, pick holes, so to speak, in tight areas. And it's been a long time since we've had players of that quality. I mean, we was all treated to Bradley Dack for 2-3 seasons, especially 2015-16 before he moved on to Blackburn. And I did notice, I think via Rovers Chat on Twitter, that he's made his 100th appearance at the weekend for the Ewood Park boys, and he's I think he scored 40 goals and made 63 assists in that century of appearances. So going from strength to strength. So a quick well done to Bradley Dack. But yeah, in terms of our squad, I think we'll be absolutely fine, and I still think we're finishing the top half because we have good players. It might not be the biggest squad, but I think there's plenty of quality in there. Obviously, there was a little set 2 at the end between Paul Lambert and Steve Evans. Perhaps it's much ado about nothing. Steve Evans unhappy with some comments. Paul Lambert unhappy with Steve Evans being unhappy with some comments. So to try and sum it up quickly, it seems that Steve Evans wasn't too happy with something that Paul Lambert apparently said regarding young Jack Tucker, apparently calling him rubbish when he tried to play a ball down the line and it went out of play. Obviously, we don't know the full story because we were nowhere near it, so we didn't hear anything. What I will say is if Paul Lambert has said something like that, then it lacks class and it lacks integrity from a man who has managed in the Premier League. On the other side of the coin, if Steve Evans is making it up, then why? That's just stupid. But I can't see why he would make it up. But like I say, let's hope it's much ado about nothing. 2 passionate managers being passionate about their team and backing their own boys, and I've got no problem with that at all. I don't see why people on social media are having a pop at Steve Evans without knowing the full story. Fine, have an opinion about him, but don't just use this as a stick to beat him with for the sake of it, because that's pointless and it doesn't achieve anything. But it does seem that Paul Lambert may have said something else that we're not aware of. But fingers crossed that we don't hear too much more about it and it all gets swept under the carpet and we can all just get on with looking back on what was a very good game between two good sides that are probably slightly on slightly different stages of their journey in terms of where they were trying to go and where they currently are. I think we're a solid mid-table League One side at the moment, trying to squeeze into the top half, and Ipswich are obviously a side full of quality that's aiming to get back in the Championship at the first attempt. So Was a really good game, really enjoyable to watch. I'd imagine for the neutral it was a decent spectacle. Right, before I finish up tonight and let you all go, match ratings, we'll just compare ours to Luke's. So I'll read Luke's first and then ours. Jack Bottom 6, 6.5. The back three I feel a bit harsh now. Luke gave 7s to all three of Jack Tucker, Max Eamer and Conor Ogilvie. We said all three 6.5. Barry Fuller, we both gave a 7. Stuart O'Keefe was the biggest difference. We gave 6. Just thought he was a little bit slack in possession again. By no means a poor performance, and hopefully if he does get a run of games, then obviously he will improve. But Stuart O'Keefe got an 8 off Luke. Mark Byrne got an 8. We said 7. Tom O'Connor, we both said 6. Both agreed with Ollie Lee, 6. Alex Jakubiak, Luke gave 6. We said 6.5, and we both said Brandon Hanlon a 7. Quick thing about Brandon, thought he was superb on Saturday. Didn't always come off for him. A couple of times his first touch was slightly off and it bounced off him and he lost possession. But not once did he stop working. Not once did he shirk a challenge. Not once did he go and stop trying to win it back. He's unlucky with a header second half. He could invariably end up with assist first half. Tries an acrobatic overhead kick that falls at the feet of Max Eamer. I lost count of the amount of times that centre halves were going through the back of him. And did he roll around, pretend he was injured? No, he just bounced back up, cracked on again. Asked for the ball again, which for me is a massive thing. Never stopped wanting it, never stopped asking for it, even when things weren't going his way. And I just think if he gets one shortly, he'll go on a little bit of a run, because I think there's a really good League One player in there. Don't agree with all this nonsense that he was getting on social media. He's rubbish, he should be dropped, he's non-league. If you're saying types of things like that, then you're not watching Gillingham Football Club properly. So just a little rant. Anyway, in terms of substitutes, Lee Hodson, 6, we said 5. Mikael Mandron, we both said 6, and Ben Pringle, we both said 7. I've already spoken about him. I thought he was brilliant when he came on. A contender for man of the match, which shows how good he was, because he only played about half an hour, I think. He got about 40 minutes in fairness to him, but he was absolutely spot on. And if we can get him up to full speed, we've got one hell of a player. And like I say, I'll keep saying, I think we'll be absolutely fine. I think we're in a slightly false position. I know you can't say that because you are where you are because you've won games and you've got a certain amount of points, like I've already said, and I totally understand that. But I just think we've got 2 games coming up that are really winnable. And if we can pick up 4 points from Oxford and Southend, I think that'll set us up nicely. That'll get us to 14 points from 11 games. I don't think that'll be a disaster. But yeah, just quickly before I finish up then, final thing from me, result of the week, which I'm going to try and do now on a weekly basis. It's going to have to be our opponents this coming Saturday, isn't it? I don't think anybody saw that coming. I know Lincoln have lost their manager, Danny Cowley, and his brother, Nick. And I saw a stat, something ridiculous. I think they'd lost 2 home games in about 2 years or something mental. It might not be quite that, so don't take that as gospel. But they'd lost 2 in a lot. Only lost 2 in a lot of home games under the Cowleys, and they've lost 2 on the bounce since. But I didn't see Oxford going there and winning 6-0, not in a million years. So fair play to Carl Robinson and his players. It's one hell of a result, and it takes them up to pretty much mid-table now on 12 points from their 10 games. So yeah, it'll be a test Saturday. But I think we've got the players to hurt them. They do concede a lot of goals, Oxford. I mean, if you look at it, they've scored 19, conceded 15. So there's only one team that's scored more, but there's only 3 teams that have conceded less. And Bolton obviously have played their kids for most part of the season, and Wimbledon and Southend have been absolutely tragic. So anyway, that's enough from me. We will be back Thursday, hopefully myself and Boz this week. I'm not sure entirely though, because I know he's got work, which will be a review of the week, which I think will be a quiet one again. So the main topic will be previewing Oxford this coming Saturday, and we will be there at the Cassham Stadium, myself and Boz and Stocky for Matchday Live. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. You know where we are: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Until next time, up the Gills.